Aye, kuwe kuamadue. Aye, kuwe kuamadue. Aye, kuwe kuamadue. Aye, kuwe kuamadue.
Welcome to the Oral History Project with the Brotherhood of Elders Network. I'm your host, Spencer Whitney, and here with us today we have Baba Jim Hill. Could you introduce yourself too, sir?
Besides the fact that I'm Baba Jim Hill,
Yep.
I am honored to be here today and looking forward to our conversation. I've been part of the Brotherhood since its early beginnings, so this is an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this project.
Well, thank you so much, Baba Jim. We're so glad to have you, and we will get started. So the first question we usually start with is just around background. So we'd like to know about, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Midwest, Toledo, Ohio. Born and raised there, so I'm a Midwesterner. Went to school went to public schools in Toledo, and later went to Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. So most of my young adult life was in Ohio, and was able to escape there a little later after college. Still have friends there, but that was home. Born and raised in the projects, public housing in Toledo, Ohio. So sometimes when I meet young brothers who talk about their struggles, I share with them. I said, well, it's interesting to come from the kind of background that I came from, and having had the opportunities laid out in front of me, and having been prepared to take advantage of those opportunities, to start my own business, to start my own company, and to be a marketing and communications professional, and having had really done work for some of the largest and biggest brands in America, coming from public housing.
Wow.
It can be done.
No, that's inspiring. And what was that like growing up in public housing?
Well, it's really interesting because I don't remember a lot because we moved out. But the thing that I remember most, I think, was this feeling of everybody knowing each other. And when we talk about taking a village, there were a lot of black people, as you can imagine, who lived there. The families got to know each other. The families looked out for each other. And I heard stories from my mother about how my sister and I sometimes would wander off in the projects, just walking. And people who knew them and knew us is like, Sandy and Jimmy, where are you going? Let me take you home. It was a community. And it was something that really is missed nowadays, I think. You can live next to somebody for 20 years and not even really know them. It wasn't like that growing up.
Interesting. So as you were growing up, with your siblings and things like that, and people, it sounds like you just had the whole village, if you will, kind of mentality of people looking out for each other and having that effect.
Yeah, I think everybody knew Sandy and Jimmy Hill. Everybody knew us, knew who we were, knew who we belonged to, and it was enlightening and very positive.
Excellent. What about school? What was that like when, in middle school, high school? What was that experience like for you?
Middle school and high school was interesting time for me. I am 2 years younger than my sister, who was missed everything in school. Okay. Highest number of awards when the awards program happened. An all-A student. Sometimes it was a little difficult to follow that, to be as good as they expected me to be because of her. And sometimes I just rebelled. It was like, no, I'm going to be me. I'm not Sandy Hill's brother. And I share with her and tease her sometimes and tell her that that's what everybody knew me as. Oh, you're Sandy Hill's brother. Told her I'd take a test and I'd sign my paper. Sandy Hill's brother. So So it was sometimes challenging. I didn't like school at all. I went because it was something that I had to do, but it wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. And my grades were not that good, but things kind of changed in high school. And I was able to be selected, or I was selected, to be on the yearbook staff. And it just helped change my whole personality as it relates to thinking about school and what do I do after school, which led me into a career in communications.
Got it. So you said earlier that you didn't really like school, particularly middle school, wasn't really your thing. You're kind of living in the shadow of your sister, if you will, because she was high achieving and, kind of doing well academically and in all these areas. What did you enjoy growing up?
I enjoyed playing tennis. I enjoyed being a boy. I enjoyed all the sports and athletics. I wasn't that good at any of them, but participated in all of them. Tried basketball, but never could dribble with my left hand, so I gave that up. Uh, Played a year of football, but realized that I was way too lightweight. Didn't weigh enough to go on to play. But I enjoyed all those kinds of things that boys do. I was enjoying growing up, and it was interesting growing up in the Midwest. Um, Very different culture than some of the brothers in the Brotherhood who grew up in California. Um, Berkeley, for example, much more political in a sense than growing up in the Midwest. Um, but it was, when I look back on it, it was a good time, but with challenges.
Okay. Oh well, that certainly sounds like an interesting upbringing. Who would you say influenced you the most
Oh my gosh.
as you were growing
I,
up?
I think teachers, probably, family for sure. Um, there were several teachers that I can still remember who gave me opportunities in the classroom to do different kinds of things, to excel as much as I wanted to, or as much as I could, who were very proactive in my development. Um, Mrs. Cole, who still is someone that I remember vividly in terms of helping me to become a better student, or trying to help me become a better student. Um, I think I liked middle school, probably elementary and middle school, better than high school. Um,
Interesting.
High school, I had a couple of goals. One was to work on the yearbook staff and to enjoy that. Um, the other was I enjoyed, at that time, as many boys did, I enjoyed dressing. And one of my goals was to be the best dressed. There were all these different kind of awards. I wanted to be the best dressed senior boy. And which, when I think about it, is like, how in the world could you have been so trite in your thinking? But it was like the cool guys, that's what they did. That they were wearing the best sweaters, the best shoes, and I wanted to be a part of that. So high school did change my entire life, though, and things that happened in high school, or when I was in high school, changed my entire life.
Interesting. And what got you so interested in pursuing a career in communication?
Good question. This is a story. Um, my father was a clerk at a store in Toledo that was a photographic and sporting goods store. Strange combination. He worked in the back of the store, checking in cameras that needed to be repaired, or any kind of photographic equipment that needed to be repaired. That was his job. He didn't repair them. He just checked them in those days, primarily sent them to Kodak for repairs. But one of his customers was a guy who was the chief photographer for the company Owens Corning Fiberglass, which was located in Toledo. Toledo was known as the glass capital of the world because there were three major glass companies, Owens Corning being one of those. Owens Corning as in insulation, Pink Panther, any kind of fiberglass materials that are used in cars, manufactured by Owens Corning. So I got to know this guy. His name was Bill French. And Bill French was a business person. His studio or his department was huge. He had about maybe 10 people working for him. And one day I visited his office and I saw on his desk, he had two, or on his wall in his office, he had two plaques from United Airlines saying that he had basically traveled 100,000 miles a year. And back in those days, that was a lot of travel.
No, that's
Bill
still
French, Bill French and my father were very good friends. So Bill French invited us to his home out in the suburbs, which was beautiful. We went on his boat. One I remember vividly. One weekend, we became, my sister and I became again very good friends with him. So whenever there were photographs being taken, your school photographs, and you get 10 5x7s and 20 wallet size. We literally went to the studio and he had professional photographers take our photos, and we ended up with hundreds of photographs. So he was somebody that was instrumental in opening my eyes up, because one day I said, "So, Mr. French, what department are you in?" And he said, "Well, I report to the public relations director." And I said to myself, public relations, I have no idea what it is, but if that means you can have a boat, you can travel 100,000 miles plus a year. Oh, and I forgot to mention he had a red Corvette convertible. If you can have that and a house in the suburbs, a good job, I want to be in public relations. And I am celebrating my, 38th year in public relations. It's what I decided to do. It's what I went to school for. And finally learned what it was. But it was something that I decided to do for all the wrong reasons. It was all materialistic. But I thought that at that time, it was a career that I could pursue because it was writing. I loved to write. I loved English. And I found out that that was some of what public relations and communications was all about. So I decided when I was in the 10th grade what I was going to do for the next 40 years.
Wow. So, well, it seems like it worked out.
It
So
worked out. It worked
yeah,
out.
that's excellent. That's excellent. What brought you to California?
A job. I was in Chicago and had been in, again, the Midwest for most of my life. I was working for a company. I think I'd been in Chicago for about 2 or 3 years. Came from Wisconsin. I was living in Wisconsin and working for S.C. Johnson, which is Raid and Pledge and Windex and all those. I have a very strong consumer products background. I got an offer to go to Chicago to join a company by the name of Consolidated Foods. And most people had never heard of, didn't know what Consolidated Foods, what the company did or what the company was, although it was in the top 50 in terms of largest income producing companies in America. In 1982, we changed the name from Consolidated Foods to the Sara Lee Corporation. Sara Lee Corporation owned Hanes Hosiery, Hanes Pantyhose, Legs, Jimmy Dean Sausage, Popsicle, Shasta Beverages, just a whole list of consumer products. And I was the public relations and communications director. Someone called me one day and said, Burrell Advertising is looking for a public relations director. And at that time, Burrell Advertising was the largest African-American owned advertising agency in the country, probably the largest in the world, based in Chicago. And I said, I really want to go to a company. I had been in public relations now for many years and really wanted to see if I couldn't leverage the experience that I had and really go to an agency. So I wanted to go to not just a company, but a public relations agency. But they said they were looking for a director, and I said, nah, that's not something that I'm really interested in, being a director at a public relations agency. Person called me back a week later and said, Jim, I made a mistake. They're not looking for a director. They're looking for the president of a public relations agency. And I said, oh, well, that's a little different. So, long story short, I joined Burrell Public Relations as their first CEO. They turned it into a company, not a division of Burrell Advertising. Tom Burrell ran Burrell Advertising. I ran Burrell Public Relations. And it was an incredible experience and a joy, especially to be working with people that were as creative as they were, outstanding reputation. But the main thing was it was owned by African Americans. It was a black company, and I had never experienced that before.
Wow. What would you say would be the biggest difference or something you noticed when you moved to California in your outside of working at being part of this company now?
Well, the biggest difference was the whole orientation of the work that I did, because when I left Chicago and came to California, I joined Kaiser Permanente. So all of a sudden, it was like 15 years of heavy consumer products work, being at consumer products companies, being at Burrell, and being an agency for consumer products companies. Our largest client, for example, was McDonald's, and we did Coca-Cola, and we did Procter & Gamble, and 27 different brands at Procter & Gamble for some of their projects. Coming to California and working for a company, an organization like Kaiser was extremely different. Kaiser is a not-for-profit. I had never worked in the non-for-profit world, except for a small stint in public television. I was a public television producer for a while. So I did have a little nonprofit background, but the mentality is just totally different. And it was not easy. It was not an easy transfer into California, as easy as it was in Chicago. It was a little tougher to make the change. People in California were a little more standoffish. Chicago, very welcoming. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I worked at Burrell. And everybody knew Burrell, respected Burrell. So all of a sudden I'm coming to California, it's like, who is this Jim Hill? And it was tough to break into kind of the world of Oakland and the East Bay. It was hard. And I've talked to other people who have made that same kind of transition and have experienced the same thing.
That's interesting. Now, in terms of community, did you also find, you did mention that people were a little bit more standoffish when you came out here. When you moved out here, what was that like in terms of, getting acclimated with other black folks? Was that kind of more of an issue? I know you're already working for the company, but in terms of like your neighborhood and things like that, what was that like for you? It
was, again, a little different. There were people, let me say this, that were extremely welcoming. And I don't want to make it sound like everybody that I ran into was a little standoffish, because that's not the case. But when you come into a society of folks that have lived together, that have worked together, that have known each other for 40 years, it's a little difficult sometimes to break in. So there was a great sense of community, working for the community, giving back to the community. And I had the opportunity to do some of that through the work that I did at Kaiser. So I tried to do my best to fit in, to learn who was who, and also who not to work with. So it was a learning experience, but there were people along the way that really, really helped. Arnold Perkins, for one. Oh my gosh. Meeting him was one of the highlights of me coming to the Bay Area, and finding someone to really help to understand what I did. He was my first, when I left Kaiser, I started Hill & Company Communications, he was my first client.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. I'm going to shift gears here a little bit.
Okay.
I'd like to know what would you say are some lessons that you've learned about being black in America or just society at large?
That you daily have to deal with racism, that it is something that doesn't go away, that is something that is going to be a part, I think, of this society for a long time. I think, there are people who want to end it. I just don't know how that's going to be possible. So being a black man in America is a tough job. And we have all kinds of problems that we still have to conquer, that we still have to face. I think there are many of us who have not given up yet, but it's a long haul. The devastation of slavery, I think, has still been a part of our lives and has not gone away yet. Strides have been making, but there still is so much work to do. And there are, again, I think, dedicated people in the East Bay that are working very hard to level the playing field. But it's a task. It's hard work. And you're aware of that, I think, sometimes every day, of the hard work that's ahead of you, the hard work that has to be done. And it takes dedication. It takes people who are not going to give up, but will continue to fight. And it may not happen with my generation. Hopefully, it's something that we can pass on to your generation and the generations to come. It's worth fighting for. It's don't give up the fight. And I try to instill that in younger people. Don't give up. Although it may seem and sound difficult, you can't give up. We got people that we need to save, to help, to educate, to politicize, to bring better health care to. We can do those things. It may take time, but it can be done.
I hear that. What would you say are the top 3 things or challenges that have been most harmful to the community?
Well, again, I think at the top is racism. And as a result of that, poor health care, economic instability has been a big, big challenge. I think, as I mentioned before, we've got some huge healthcare issues that we have got to face. And I think the whole COVID scenario really opened a lot of people's eyes and really showed America the disparities that exist in black and brown communities. Health disparities are extremely, extremely bad as it relates to black people. Economic instability, we have suffered as a result, I think, of racism and being able to achieve the kind of economic stability that is required. I think the third thing is education. Our education systems need vastly improvement. And again, these are, I think, 3 things that we have just got to continue to focus on, to fight for, to change, to bring about change. And not just look at it as a project, but look at it as a change mandate. Change has got to happen in those 3 areas.
What do you think are some ways to make some of those changes?
Whoa. I think, again, it's persistence. It's getting people to be a little more politically astute in terms of the power of politics. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking about how do we use our minds to educate people about the importance of voting, getting involved in the political system, making people more aware of the value of politics and how it can change, not sitting back and saying, well, I ain't going to vote this time because of this or that. You can't do that. We have got to figure out and continue to fight for change through the political system. It's got to happen. We are in some cases, just too apolitical. We've got to get involved in the system. And that's something that Baba Joe Brooks always talks about, and he is absolutely right. The politics is important if we're going to advance our people in our communities. Got to do it.
Absolutely. So I just heard you mention Baba Joe Brooks and earlier Baba Arnold Perkins. That kind of leads me into the question of how did you get involved and how did you hear about the Brotherhood of Elders Network?
Arnold Perkins called, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so men, and he asked one question. Are you interested, or would you be interested in helping improve the lives of young black boys and men? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. He said, well, if you are, I'm having a gathering at my house. I want you to come. And men showed up. I remember it was a great dinner. And we talked about the possibility of putting an organization together. Didn't know for sure what it was going to be, what it was going to be called, but you had probably a dozen men sitting around in his living room talking about the need to come together to help improve the quality of life for young black boys. And that's how it all got started. Joe was there as well as others, some who are still involved in the Brotherhood. But it was putting together this idea in our minds and then figuring out, okay, how are we going to do this? And the Brotherhood of Elders Network grew from that. 12 years ago, I think sometimes we lose track, but it's been 12, 13 years. It's been some time.
Wow. How has the Brotherhood of Elders Network impacted your life?
Oh my gosh, it has had a huge impact on my life because I was the chair for 10 years or so. So it has helped me understand how to pull organizations together. It's been a challenge sometimes, but it has impacted me by developing new friendships, by really working with black men that you totally respect in terms of their willingness to bring about change. Some of the smartest brothers I've ever run into are in the Brotherhood of Elders. Some of the young men who are in it, because as you know, we are not just Babas and elders, we are an organization of young people like yourself. And we really have got the opportunity to work with young people to see how that change can be made at a different level. So it's had a huge, huge impact. Some of the people that I never would have known, people whose paths I probably never would have crossed, it's happened through the Brotherhood of Elders Network. And to see some of the things that we've done, seeing the impact that we've had on people, seeing the impact that we've had on organizations, seeing the impact that we make in the community, it's amazing. It has truly been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
Wow. What would you say you're most proud of?
Surviving 10 or 11 years as the chair. Think about an organization where you have got the brilliance of so many men, the interest of so many men, the ideas from all of these men of things that need to be done, things that they want to do. How do you corral all of that? Because, usually there's not a bad idea. It's about how much can we do. So trying to figure out how to make all that happen, how to satisfy people. And I think I did somewhat of an adequate job, but it was a challenge because of the brilliance that surrounds you. You have to figure out how to work with a variety of different thoughts, feelings, attitudes that people have. But I think we were able to do that, and I think I would say that I was maybe helpful in making that happen.
Excellent, excellent. And you mentioned earlier, part of what happens with the Brotherhood of Elders Network is working with younger brothers and, helping them to get to, the next stage. If you could give your younger self advice or some wisdom, what would it have been?
Younger self. I think one of the things would be younger self, uh, preparation, being prepared for whatever it's going to be in your life. It doesn't have to be that you're working for a major corporation. It doesn't have to be that you're working for a nonprofit. It could be whatever it is you want to do, but be prepared. Take time to really think about what does preparation look like for this particular area that I'm interested in. And be yourself. Don't give up. Don't walk away from it because you think it's too tough. Take the time to really prepare. And the other thing is, in terms of preparation, prepare for getting old. Uh, that takes some thought and takes some time. I often tell people that I remember the first job I had at Owens Corning Fiberglass. It was really interesting because the gentleman I mentioned who worked at Owens Corning and running their photographic department, my first job was at Owens Corning Fiberglass. So all of a sudden, we became peers and working at the same company. But I remember, you get some kind of announcement or a flyer on your desk about a workshop in the company that's going to be on retirement. And you're like 22 years old, 23 years old, and you're thinking retirement. What I'm thinking about is where's the next party? Who's going to have the best party that weekend? I'm not thinking about retirement. And I tell people now, and I tell young brothers like you, if I had it to do all over again, I would have been the first person in the room to talk about retirement. How do you prepare for that part of your life? What do you do when you figure out and find out and finally accept the fact that you can't work anymore or you don't want to work anymore or it's time to move on? Have you prepared yourself for that next step? So it's really sticking to whatever it is you want to do, and it doesn't make any difference what it is. Be the best that you can do, and that comes from preparation. Really being prepared, and then preparing for your next steps in life.
Wow. Oh, yeah. That does make sense, especially being around that age, being in your 20s, and just not even thinking that long term, and saying, okay, how am I going to prepare? Once I get older, and what are the steps that need to be taken? Like you said, it's just kind of more present thinking rather than thinking that
Yeah.
forward. So that certainly would serve a lot, serve a lot going forward.
Yeah, your life, your health, your experiences that you have in your 20s, let me tell you, it doesn't last forever. It will change. So you got to be prepared to deal with that change.
That's true. What have you felt has been, I guess, the most challenging about that change?
Um, well, it's really interesting because I'm one of the few elders that still works. I still run a public relations, advertising, social marketing company. Um, Realizing that at some point the change is going to occur, that I'm no longer working, and just being ready to take that next step. Realizing that change is here, and where do I go next, and what do I do next? I'd love to get to the point where I don't have to do RFPs to get new business, that I don't have to go out there and beat the bushes for new clients, that I can finally do what I want to do. And a lot of what that would be is more time devoted to organizations like the Brotherhood of Elders Network. I want to be the one in control. I want to be the one who goes for that change in my life that is going to be controlled by what it is I want to do as opposed to what it is I have to do. And trying to figure out when is that going to occur. I really enjoy what I do, and a lot of the work that we do is so different than the work that I did in Chicago. Most of what we do now for nonprofit organizations, for causes, for the kinds of programs and projects and initiatives that are good. I'm no longer representing fast food companies. I'm no longer representing companies that are selling shoes. I'm working on projects that help people learn about good nutrition and physical activity. We're working on projects that communicate the benefits of getting a COVID vaccine, especially for Black people. We're trying to work on marketing that will get more people involved and interested in being foster parents, especially for Black and brown children. So changing from that, because I love it so and it's so greatly needed, um, it's, I know it's time, probably overtime, but walking away from that would be tough because it's just, um, it's just good work and it's needed work. So change is going to come. I got to be ready for change. But right now, I'm kind of enjoying where I am because of the kinds of projects that we work on.
No, that's excellent. No, and I think you touched on something really important was the idea about doing understanding the difference between what you have to do and what you want to do, and figuring out a way. It sounds like you've been working on this already of how to blend the two of those, so that the work that you've already say enjoy doing, you can now find it's like, okay, how can I apply this in a way that's going to be a lot more beneficial to
Yeah.
the community.
And
So
it's really interesting because what I didn't realize was working all those years in the for-profit world. And let me tell you something, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people kind of shoot down for-profit organizations, businesses. Um, you learn a lot. I mean, some of the best things that you learn, or best things that I learned, was in the for-profit world. There is so much money available for training, so much money available for training and development of yourself, for people that work for you. And oftentimes that doesn't exist in government agencies or not-for-profits. The budgets just aren't there. Um, what I think has to happen is that you've got to figure out a way to be prepared to leave some of that um, and, uh, and move on. Um, it's a challenge, but it's one that I think is going to be, or hopefully will be, rewarding. Um, I'm not sure I really answered that question as you were asking it. Um,
well, it sounds like from what you're saying, there's been a lot of ways that you can approach this, and you've been kind of, like I said, working
Yeah.
at that from a lot of ways, and having that experience allows you to get to
Well,
this
yeah,
point. That you're saying.
that was the point I was going to make. I didn't realize at the time that all those years of working on the for-profit side really was preparing me to do a good job on the not-for-profit side. I am able to do what I do for clients today because of all those things that I learned from years ago. There isn't a lot in public relations, and I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but there's not a lot that I haven't done. And a lot of that is just because I've done it so long. But there aren't any surprises that clients come up with nowadays that I can't handle or haven't done. So I finally came to the conclusion and realized that along the way, I think the good Lord was preparing me for the work that I do now. And He took me through a path of education around my craft that I didn't maybe at the time respect or understand, but now I got it. Yeah. I can do what I do today and do it well because of those years of preparation.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, final question: what would be some advice you would give to the next generation?
Oh, again, I think some of the things that I've already said, don't give up. Don't give up. Don't think that this road that we are traveling in terms of improving the quality of life of our communities, of our people, is a tough one that can't be done. Don't ever give up. Figure out how to become even more prepared, how to become more involved, and never back away from having a spirit of helping community. You can't. I'm a product of the 60s, And I was on campus during a time when you wake up in the morning and you didn't know if you wanted to be or should be a Panther, a Muslim, a Marxist. It's like it was such a vital and interesting and challenging time. And I think it's necessary for young people nowadays to be challenged, to think about what is it I want to be and how can I prepare for that. But we were all about, let's go back to our communities and get involved. I mean, if you were on a campus in the 60s, that usually was kind of your mindset. How can I help the community? It has been a part of me. I can't get rid of that. It still is something that I crave doing, and it's why I like a lot of the work that I do, because it is helping communities. So young people, stick to it. It may seem sometimes frustrating and difficult, but we got to do it. We got to do the work. But again, as I said earlier, you got to be prepared. You got to take the time to prepare yourself with the skills, with the knowledge, read, be involved, listen, learn about what's going on. Don't think that you have all the answers, because let me tell you, in your 20s, you don't. You may think you do, but you don't. In your 30s, you have a few more, but you're not there yet. So appreciate what has been, I think, learned by a lot of the elders. Use us. Use us for information sources. Use us to learn from. Use us to hear about the mistakes that we made, so that you don't make the same mistakes again. And let me tell you, all of us have made mistakes. So we are a wealth of information. Use us to your advantage. And hopefully you'll be in a better situation than we were when we started this trek many, many years ago.
Excellent. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to discuss?
It's really interesting because I do media training. I teach people how to talk to the media. And one of the things that we always teach people is when an interviewer says, is there anything else that you'd like to discuss? You never, ever say, no, I think I've covered it all. But what's really interesting when you ask me that, I'm like, gee, I think we've covered it all. But from my media training, it's like, I just want people, young people, to take advantage of elders, more so than ever. How do we do a better job of bonding together? How do we do a better job of working together? How can we be a better service to you? Let us know what we need to do as we, again, go through this journey together. How can I be a better help to you? What is it you need from me that you haven't received? And what is it that I can gain from you? It's not a one-way street. There's so much that I can learn from you in addition to you learning from me. It's a two-way street. Let's figure out how to make that two-way street even stronger than it's been in the past. There's so many opportunities out there for us to work together and to realize that iron sharpens iron. When we can come together, when we can work together, when we can focus on getting the work done, it's just sitting back and looking at the results. So let's figure out how to make that happen.
Great. Baba Jim, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you being part of the Oral History Project and also being such a force in the Brotherhood.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And again, it's been something that I've loved, something that's impacted my life. And I appreciate the invitation, and I will cherish the opportunity to be a part of this oral history project. It's very special. Thank you so much.